Epic is pretty huge now, isn't it? Well, I guess it's always been huge. Today, people primarily know Epic for its monster success that is Fortnite, and for their aggressive buying of exclusives for their less-than-complete storefront. But a bit over a decade ago, they were known for other massive games that helped them grow into the juggernaut they became: Infinity Blade, Unreal Tournament, and today's subject, Gears of War. In the mid to late 2000s and early 2010s, the Gears franchise was one of Microsoft's biggest exclusive series since the early days of the Xbox 360. It's a franchise that's made a major impact on the games industry as a whole, from its third-person cover-based shooter mechanics, its approach to cooperative play, and even the hardware used in consoles. Gears of War also happens to be one of my all-time favorite shooter video game franchises, third-person or otherwise. With Gears of War 5 coming out very soon, I thought it was a good opportunity to look back on this influential series from where it began, in the very first game that released in 2006, which also got an HD remake in 2015. It would be easy just to play one or the other, but you know what? Let's take a look at both versions of the game and see whether nostalgia is more important than a shinier coat of paint. Reload your Gnasher and rev up your chainsaw bayonet. Let's replay two versions of Gears of War. The story of Gears takes place on a planet called Sera, which is basically like Earth right down to the abuse of natural resources. After years of infighting over an energy source called emulsion, a subterranean species called the Locust started to assault the human cities. Despite the efforts of the Coalition of Order Governments, or the COG, the Locust invasions were too powerful. Even their last resort, an orbital laser strike, did little to slow the encroaching hordes, while annihilating most of the remaining human civilization. We cut to 14 years after the emergence of the Locust, where COG soldier Dominic Santiago is breaking out his best buddy, Marcus Phoenix, a former soldier who was imprisoned after going AWOL. The COG have one last-ditch effort to try and stop the Locust, by getting a device called the Resonator deep into their tunnels, mapping out their domain, where it then can be blown to hell. After the death of Lieutenant Young Kim at the hands of the Locust General Rom, Marcus is promoted to leader of Delta Squad.
Typical. Don't give the smart guy a promotion, no, give it to a jackass instead.
So Marcus and his team set out to complete their mission, and hopefully put an end to the war. A simple story that has us traveling the many different types of ruins that litter the war-torn lands of Sera, and a small cast of characters that rough their way through them as squadrons of locusts pull themselves from the ground to impede their progress. We play as Marcus throughout the campaign, but if you have a co-op buddy, they'll play as Dom. But in these playthroughs, I'm on my own. Everyone busy with their jobs and responsibilities, too busy to play through the same game twice. Anyways, we play as Marcus, a macho grizzled war vet who stuck his neck into so many battles that now his head just sits atop his muscles. Voiced by John DiMaggio.
Control, this is Delta. We're at the factory, but the entrance is blocked.
Let it sink in that this badass is voiced by the guy who played Bender and Jake the Dog.
Hey, baby, what's up?
Girl, you smell good. Did you take a bath in rainbows and cupcakes?
His best friend and right-hand man, Dom, whose pessimism but also eagerness to kick ass and support Marcus gives you that little bit of brevity to keep pressing through every battle.
Oh, shit. This is gonna be awesome.
Speaking of brevity, no one is better at giving it out than Augustus Cole, a former thrashball player who soaks up bullets like the cheers at one of his games.
Well, hell yeah, we've been waiting for the chopper, but the radios don't work for shit, sir.
And my personal favorite, Damon Baird, a cynical inventor who makes it clear that he's too smart to be dealing with all this bullcrap.
Oh, it's bullshit. Somebody here figured out that Cole played thrashball. Now it's all, oh, Cole Train, tell us all about that play again. And, hey, number 83, sign my shirt.
Everyone has a distinct personality, but unfortunately, I forgot how little it shines through in this first game. There are blips of character here and there, but the moments that make these characters memorable and lovable don't really start surfacing until the next game. Not to say that there aren't any good character moments here, but certainly not the big ones. Except for this moment where Anthony Carmine begins a family tradition.
It keeps jamming. See?
What you say?
On the other hand, despite them being gray, scaly-looking monsters, the Locusts have quite a bit of personality. From the humanoid-sized drones and grenadiers that rush up brandishing shotguns and burst assault rifles, the fast-moving wretches that can stun you with their screech and often attack in large packs, and the boomers whose thunderous footsteps echo as they approach and shout their signature before firing their rocket launchers. There's a decent variety of enemies that can come in all directions, especially below. There's a sense of order to this brutal species. It seems like the more powerful they are, the more intricate their garb, like the high-ranking Theron guards, who are tougher and smarter than their drone counterparts. Even General Rom, who really does nothing to give himself a distinct personality, but his stature and battle-weathered armor give him this air of intimidation. Their slobbery yet also gravelly deliveries to their battle cries and commands make the Locust a more involved enemy than in most other third-person shooters, even if only a little bit. You'll be fighting these hordes a lot, which makes it that much more surprising and epic when you come face to face with their mounts, which basically consist of flying tentacle monsters and T-Rexes with machine guns and rocket launchers.
Get out of there! Go, 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 go!
How are we to take on the seemingly endless hordes of beast and rage-fueled monstrosities? Fill them with lead, or explosives, or orbital laser strikes. Any of these options will do just fine. Gears of War is famous for popularizing the third-person cover shooter. Some people say that's a bad thing because it devolves combat into sitting behind chest-high walls. I say, no it's not, because you can also duck behind walls that go higher than your chest. In the words of the boomers... Okay, in all seriousness, Gears of War's gunplay isn't just about falling into cover. It's about using that cover wisely. You snap yourself into a wall with the press of a button, and it's up to you to figure out how to use that cover in order to flank your enemies while keeping yourself safe. On higher difficulties, cover becomes essential, but on lower difficulties, there's more margin for error, making running and gunning a little more viable. Again, a little more viable. Using cover after being almost shot down can give you a second to assess your situation, reload your guns, and rethink your approach. This makes some battles an ever-changing puzzle in order to survive. If you stay in the same spot, chances are you're going to be flanked, or your cover will get destroyed. If you just sit in one spot and fire randomly, you'll run out of ammo. The partner AI isn't very good, so if you don't do anything, the fighting is not going to end. Okay, that last one's more the game's fault than yours, but all I'm saying is, it's not as bare bones as some may think. Having a good hand on every aspect of a firefight is crucial. The moment-to-moment action is a frantic rush between cover and picking up whatever's nearby to make the best of your situation. And in your hands are many different types of weapons to help you get through each of those situations. The Gnasher, a lever-action shotgun that can fire quickly and turn most enemies into chunks. The Long Shot, a sniper rifle that can annihilate almost anything in a well-placed headshot. My favorite, the Torque Bow, which shoots an arrow of emulsion that sticks into an enemy, giving it a few seconds to panic before it detonates. And the one, the only, the Lancer Mark II, a fully automatic assault rifle that also has a chainsaw attached to it. Can you get more badass? And messy. You can hold up to 2 primary weapons, grenades, and a sidearm. Every weapon feels great to use, and there's plenty of ammo lying around to keep you stocked up for the many firefights that'll be ahead of you. And when it comes to putting that ammo in your gun, if you can time the reload right, you can potentially reload even faster and give yourself a damage bonus for your next clip. Although, messing it up will take even more time than if you just did nothing. And those lost precious seconds could lead to your demise. The controls in either version are tight, even tighter than the camera zoom when you're doing the roadie run. And the guitar riff that punctuates the end of almost every gunfight is a reminder that you survived another battle in this horrendous war.
Regroup. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And now, let's talk about one of the best qualities Gears of War has to offer. Architecture. Gears has gotten this reputation lately that it looks bad because of its muted color scheme, which I think is a bit unfair and does a disservice to Gears of War's great art direction. The colors are muted, yes, but those colors are attached to these massive cathedrals and buildings that look like if you crossed Roman and Gothic architectural styles and melded them into these highly detailed monoliths that tell a story of a once grand civilization that was decimated by both sides of this war. Even the glistening wet caves of the Locust tunnels make you feel like any poor soul who found themselves lost down there were brutalized by the Locust trying to make new ways to invade the surface. And the deeper you head into the caverns, the bright golden glow of liquid emulsion brightens up the tunnels with the light that started this war in the first place. Taste is subjective, and it doesn't matter whether you prefer colorful and cartoony or grim and dark. Hell, Gears of War Judgment can prove that some bright colors couldn't hurt the Gears games. But even bleak can look beautiful, and Gears of War I feel is a great example of that. The story is split into 5 acts, each bringing in something to spice up the arc. Act 2 taking place almost entirely at night, where bat-like locusts called Krill swarm anything that finds itself stranded in the shadows, so you need to create light sources in order to fend them off. Or Act 3 that sees you at the abandoned factory, where emulsion-infected wretches scamper around, exploding upon death, and entering the murky locust caves, where you take on the armored spider-like corpser that's been following you since you arrived. Check out this garden in Act 4. Look how lush and calm it is. Well, this is just lovely and... There's a degree of puzzle solving as you navigate the open areas and claustrophobic corridors, and some sections will have you picking a path and separate from your partner, and sometimes there are organic sections like that. Do you plow through the first door and start blasting with your lancer? Or do you look around and find a vantage point that has a troika turret that's being watched by 2 corpses that you just made? If you're looking around carefully enough, you can find the dog tags of fallen COG soldiers, and when you collect enough, you get a prompt to like and subscribe? Huh, I don't remember that. Was that in the original?
Yeah.
Well, how about that? Well, I suppose in honor of these casualties of war, please pay your respects by liking and subscribing.
No more favors, asshole.
I suppose I should also mention this game has multiplayer. Well, it does, and this was another big game that helped drive online console multiplayer, but I couldn't get a match on either version. Well, even if I did, I'm not the most qualified person to talk about online multiplayer. Have you seen me play Fortnite? Probably not, because just playing Fortnite on YouTube does not guarantee views at all, no matter what people say. Throughout this video, I've been bouncing the footage back and forth from the original 2006 version of Gears of War and the 2015 HD remake, both being played on Xbox One. Gameplay-wise, they function exactly the same. They could have added small things from the later games, but they kept the remake true to the original, which was a good call. Between the 2 versions, it's easy to see the graphical differences that nearly a decade has made. The remake looks fantastic, adding even more detail to the previously mentioned architecture, and even adding new things along the way. Cutscenes are completely revamped to be more expressive and get more cinematic shots, the twilight glow during the final parts of the day, to the flames of the exploded propane tanks during the krill-infested night. The graphical fidelity is top-notch, although it seemed a lot buggier than the original. Not a deal-breaker by any means, just noticeable. The 5th and final act is also made longer with an extra side mission where you need to activate a bridge in order to get to the final area. It's maybe too long with some really difficult firefights, but it ends with a battle with a Brumach, so it's pretty cool. Then there's the original version that still looks really good. Again, great architecture that excuses the muted grays and browns, but the dustier and darker looking areas actually add to this horror aspect that lingers in the atmosphere. Things passing by just out of sight, and some of the locusts look even creepier in a bit less detail in a poorly lit area. Even the character models really hold up. Mostly. The main cast is still very expressive and seemingly more scarred and worn out than in the remake. There are merits to both versions. It really comes down to, do you want a nostalgic romp through a darker setting that leans into the horror better, or a prettier looking version with a more cinematic story? Either way works. Or you could just do both, because you'll probably be finished with the game in a little over 5 hours, which surprised me because I remember it being longer. Most likely it's because I was playing on easy and normal difficulties respectively, so I could breeze through most of the battles. Although there were still some, particularly in Acts 4 and 5, that were grueling because of how many enemies were swarming you and how obnoxious some of the checkpoints were. Back in the day, I did beat the original on Insane by myself, which was made especially hard by the not very good teammate AI. If you've got a friend with you, then you two can suffer together on a higher difficulty, but if not, just knock it down to casual and have a good time being awesome, with some resistance if you get too cocky. Maybe it's because I've been through the story so many times, but 5 hours is a good length for a shooter to not overstay its welcome, considering this first game's just okay characters and plot.
Damn, Marcus. He'll get over it.
Speaking of the plot, let's burn through the rest of it like a hammer of dawn burns through a cedar. Delta Squad makes it to the Locust tunnels where they activate the resonator, but it doesn't work. After returning to Marcus's old home, he finds his father's data that details that the Locust tunnels go far deeper than they thought, burrowing all across the planet. With the targeting data in hand, Marcus and Dom stow away on a hijacked train with a lightmass bomb that's set to destroy the Locust tunnels. After more Theron guards, lambent wretches, and a berserker that ran up even though there was no train for her to run on, it comes down to the final battle with General Ram. And it sucks. Between a swarm of krill and his manhandling of a troika, he kills you super fast, very easily, and your AI partner becomes more useless than usual in this fight. It'll take a few tries, but with some well-placed torque arrows blasting away his krill barrier and a shower of grenades, eventually the Titan falls. Marcus slots the targeting data into the lightmass bomb, and it goes off, targeting major Locust tunnels, caving them in. We end on a shot of the Locust Queen, and some random Locust in the original, and she assures us this war is far from over.
And we are not dead yet.
Why does the Locust Queen look like a human? I don't know. Maybe we'll learn why in Gears 5 because it's not explained in any other game. If you're watching this and you know why the matriarch of this subterranean species is human, please adhere to the following steps.
Step 1. Email me the reason or leave a concise comment below. Step 2. Fuck you!
So that was Gears of War. How does it hold up? Pretty well, actually. But I suppose nowadays it's not an essential play. For its time, it was revolutionary for third-person shooters, console graphics, and its co-op and multiplayer aspects. And it established a world and characters that we would grow to love, but more so in the next few games. If you want to see how this huge franchise started off, it's worth checking out, and it's exceedingly easy to give it a shot, between dirt cheap 360 copies of the original, or still moderately cheap for the HD remake, or both are available for free on Xbox Game Pass and on PC. If you and a buddy want to kill an afternoon with some testosterone-fueled pounding, that sounded much worse than I meant it to, then give it a go. Either version is totally viable depending if you want it nostalgic or new. Play the first in this legendary franchise, and spin the wheel of destruction, for you are a cog in this machine of war.
Yeah, group hug.
Hey, this is Timmara, and if you're watching this, I just want to say thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I hope you enjoyed my video on Gears of War. I know I didn't go into development history like I sometimes do, but shout out to Cliff Bleszinski, who's probably not watching, but regardless, he's a big reason we have such an amazing series that is Gears. I haven't done a review video like this in a while, but if you want to see some more, click on the annotation in the bottom left to see the ones I made in 2018. If you want to be notified of more of my stuff coming out, click on my face in the bottom right. If you want to check out some of my Let's Plays or other gameplay videos, click on the annotations above. I plan on playing Gears 5 on the channel, so hopefully it's up there. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, like and subscribe and all that. This is Timmara, signing off.